Hey everyone, you're here with Dr. Python JavaScript, and what we're going to do is go over MySQL within a Node.js environment. So if you haven't watched my tutorial on how to install MySQL, how to go ahead and get the database set up, the SQL workbench, just watch my last video. As of right now, I'm going to go ahead and pretend like you have all of that installed already, and we're just going to get right into the coding. So the first thing we want to do is within here, first of all, let me explain what we're doing so that you know exactly why we're doing everything. So we're going to connect to the database, right? Then once we're connected to the MySQL database, we're going to send information to the database, right? So we'll create a table, we'll have columns within that table, and then we'll designate values for the columns in that table, thereby creating a record, which is pretty much a row in the table. Now, what information are we going to store in our database? Well, I'm going to have a unique ID, right? And I'm going to have a word, just some type of string that we put in there. And then I'll go ahead and have a column for date and a column for time, because I know those are really hard SQL topics to work with. So without further ado, let's begin. I'll move this out the way. And what we have in the beginning is we want to go ahead and bring in MySQL. How do we do that? I'll say MySQL. And then I can easily say it's equal to require. And there I'll say MySQL. So if you've already installed the package using npm, then it should be in your JSON, and therefore you should be able to require it. Awesome. Now I'm not going to require Express right now because this part of the project doesn't require Express. I see a lot of these tutorials where they're importing Express and people are trying to learn MySQL. Don't make it more complicated than it has to be, right? Learn each step at a time. Express, super easy, but why are you combining Express with MySQL? It's not really necessary. For the learning, that is. Obviously, if you're trying to make a full application, yes. But just for learning, no. So great, we have that in there. Now, I also want to import .env, right? I don't need to make a variable for this. I can just say require, and I'm probably going to do this in the beginning. And we'll literally say .env. And the coolest thing is I can say configure, or config rather. And that's going to allow me to use an environment variable that I've created already. The only thing I put in there is my password, just because I didn't want you guys to see, even though it was just like a temporary password, just for best practices. I don't want you to see my password on the screen, so I want you guys to practice best practices. Awesome. So at this point, we've got MySQL. We've got our password in here. What is the next import that we need? As of right now, we don't need a single thing. We can get started right away. So I'll go ahead and say MySQL. And there's a method called create connection, right? And that's where we're going to put in information in order to connect to the database. Now I'm going to call this const db, because pretty much anytime we do this, we're going to be dealing with the database, right? So just to make that an easier requirement, or sort of an easier variable to access, I'm just going to name db. Now this entire thing, once we have entered the properties we need, this variable now has access to a bunch of other methods that can allow us to do queries and a bunch of other cool things, connect to the port that we've set up, everything, right? So without further ado again, let's go ahead and put in the values we need here. So first thing we're going to need is the host, right? And that's just going to be root. So user is going to be root. host was localhost. Sorry about that. And here we're going to have the user, and that is where we're going to put root, or you can put user, whatever you have as your user is what you're going to put there. Password, which I usually like to put right after user. For that, this is the cool part. So I can say process dot env. Oh, so dot env. Oh, all right. So maybe it's a lowercase. Is that what it is? Yeah. So process dot env dot, and now it's going to be the variable that you created for your password. In my case, I just used secret. Awesome. So with that being said, we also will need a port that we're connecting to. Most of the time the default port is just going to be 3306, but don't quote me on that because there are times when that definitely can change. Now obviously the most important thing is the database, right? What is the database that we're connecting to? Now I can create the database with the commands as well. So I think I might do that for this first time. Let's pretend that we didn't have a database. Let's create a database with our code. It's pretty easy. So now we've had all this set up, what I can easily do is say db dot connect, okay. And it's going to take a callback function, has an error, awesome. So we're just going to use arrow syntax from there. And for here, I'm going to literally say, without, having to create another function for it outside, I'm just going to start creating the query. So first I'll say, if we get an error, let's just throw error, which is pretty much just going to log an error. And if that isn't the case, then we can say db.query. And that's just going to allow us to set up a SQL command. Now, one thing that I've been doing as practice is that I'll go ahead and create a variable for my SQL command initially, so I can just put that in there, and that way it just looks nice syntactically. So here, usually use template literal strings, and I'll say create database, and now we're gonna just name our database. In this case, I'll say words. And I'll do it lowercase. So I'll say words. Awesome. So that's our command, and we always need to include the semicolon or you'll get an error. From here, we can actually use this in our command, right? So let's go ahead and say SQL. And then here, we can technically put the fields or results that we're going to expect, but I'm not going to do that. We'll just do our callback function. And this callback function will have error, results, and fields as parameters. Now, will you need all of this? Probably not. But again, I mentioned that I just want to stay within industry practice standard. So, great. If we have an error, let's just deal with that error by throwing an error. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and execute this command, and we'll say console.log. We've connected. Oh, connected and the database is set up. So that's great. I could have ran another query command to show the database. So that's one thing you can note. I'll probably just create that in a separate file so that you guys can view that. Just for the fun of it, I'll just console.log results, and then I'll also console.log fields, so you guys can just see if there is any data returned there, which there really shouldn't be. Probably results, because it probably show that we've changed the database. So great, we have all this going on. Now, one thing that you want to get in the habit of doing is ending the connection after, so that you don't have your application constantly connect to the server and wasting computing power, especially if you're running this locally. Well, actually, in any instance, because if you're not running it locally, you definitely don't want to get charged for anything that you don't need to get charged for. So, with this being said, over here, I can easily say db dot end, which will pretty much end the connection. So I'll do that here. All right, we'll see db dot end. We'll invoke that, and I can go ahead and just console.log that I've ended. Oh, sorry about that. So let's just, let's first if error, let's throw that error. Okay, looks like I am forgetting one thing here. So this looks nice, awesome, that looks nice. Weird. Why am I getting if error? So it says error is declared but never read. Connection has ended. Alright, so let's see what's going on in here and why we're getting this. Okay, so it's just that we have, I think, multiple parameters, the same name. So let's see what we can get here. Alright, so look, I was just forgetting an arrow. Definitely need to get my IntelliSense on a different level here. So connection has ended. We'll say successfully. And let's go ahead and run this, right? So one thing about running this is that I won't need to, I won't need to invoke this function or anything like that. It's just going to go ahead and do it itself. So all I have to do is say node, I'll say words, date, time.js. Right. Awesome. So it says we've connected and the database is set up. Here, what is that, right? Well, that's going to be, I'll show you right now, the results. And here the result says, all right, field count 0, affected rows, right? It says affected rows, saying 1, insert ID 0, server status 2, warning count, message true. Now over here, we have undefined. And that's because the fields don't exist because we didn't create a table yet. After that, we've successfully ended the connection. So how can I see if all of this works? Well, I'll take all of this code here. Let's copy that. I'll create a new file. And here, so let's create a new file. Of course, let's create a new file again. Let's type in the file name. So I'll say connect db.js. Or I could say create new. Let's say create db, because obviously it's going to be new if you're creating it, right? So create db.js. And I'll just literally post this here. I'll take those. Oh, let's get this out of the way. I'll take those requirements we had, and I'll copy them here as well. And because once we've created a database, why would we want to run this again? We wouldn't, right? So now that we've created the database, I can go ahead and check it out. Another thing is, instead of create database, I'll say over here, I can say show databases. And then that'll be it. I'll run this command. I'll say showing all databases. Oh. Showing all DBs. So I'll just say databases on my localhost instance. All right, and we just run the same code here. So we'll say index. Oh, sorry. I'll just go up here, run that same thing, and check this out. So I ran it over here, showing all databases on my local instance. We have a database called Dr. PJDB, right? So Dr. Python JavaScript database. Information underscore schema. This was actually built in, so that came in with our SQL Server download. Database mySQL. That one I may have created. Have to go back and check that. Performance schema. Again, that came in with the system. System database, that actually came in with the database. Well, it says sys, but it stands for system. TestDB, I created that. And words. Words. Awesome. So we do have that database. This time, for fields, it was actually logged, right? Last time we had undefined, this time field packet. Interesting how results is showing row data packet, right? We have a field packet here. Field packet showing cool database, table schemata. So it's probably using, one of these to sort of read all that information. Name, database, cool. So it tells you a bunch of information. And that's fields, right? So that's pretty cool. And we can actually now prove that that's happened successfully. Now the next step to show you that it's really, really happened successfully is for me to go ahead and open up mySQL workbench. And I'm going to go ahead and check out the databases I have in the system. So let's switch the camera right over there. And awesome. So as you can see, we do have words as a database there. I hope you guys enjoyed. Tune out for my next video where I'll show you how to actually fire off query commands.